Welcome to Emotion Well, EFR's podcast about all things related to emotional wellness. I'm Johanna Dunlevy, the Wellness Manager for Employee and Family Resources, also known as EFR, and I'm the host of our podcast. As an FYI, EFR is located in Des Moines, Iowa, and we are Iowa's first employee assistance program and provide a variety of services you can learn more about at www.efr.org. I would like to welcome Kimberley Jackman to our podcast. Welcome, Kimberley.
Hello.
Thank you for being on. For our listeners, I just want to give you a little information about Kimberley before I let her do a more robust introduction of herself. Kimberley is someone who I met in the last year, and I feel like we've become fast wellness friends, and you are someone who is a wellness practitioner and you own your own business, Firefly Wellness. You are also working alongside Employee and Family Resources, providing some training and education to our EAP clients with our wellness benefit. And I wanted you to be on the podcast because I think you are a remarkable person with a lot of information to share with people who maybe want to know a little bit more about personal well-being. I know that you have some areas of expertise that we'll dive into, specifically along the lines of ergonomics in the workplace. But overall, I just want people to get to know you and learn a little bit more about the services that you provide through Firefly Wellness, as well as some of your own personal wellness philosophies. So welcome to the show.
Yay. Thank you, Johanna. I appreciate this so much.
Yeah.
I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited to be a partner with EFR because you guys are doing wonderful things.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
So tell our listeners a little bit about yourself in terms of, what your business offers, where you're located, and then I want to dive into how you became a wellness professional, because I think that's always an interesting story for all of us in the field.
Okay, awesome. I can do that. So my name is Kimberley Jackman, and I'm a national board certified health and wellness coach. And my business is Firefly Wellness, and we really encourage and support individuals and employees with the overall well-being of themselves, the company, kind of building upon, energy behind wellness. We do lunch and learns, workshops, and coaching. And that includes a wheel of wellness coaching from stress to gratitude, mindfulness, our life satisfaction, our energy, and emotional and mental fitness, which I don't think is talked about a whole lot, but I think it's really becoming more of that forefront conversation. I'm hoping it will be.
Absolutely.
So our programs are very upbeat, they're energetic. We try to get out there and really make people get excited about their health and what little steps they can do when they leave or when I leave the program, like they could take away, and just one little thing they can do to try to get the step in the right direction.
Perfect. When you said mental and emotional fitness, it just reminded me of physical fitness, and we've all grown very familiar with what physical fitness means, right? There's curriculum in schools around physical fitness, physical education, and I love that you call it mental and emotional fitness, because that is just as important, and that exists just like physical fitness does. And so we'll talk a little bit more about the multiple dimensions of well-being, specifically why we should kind of think about ourselves as whole beings versus a physical being and an emotional being, because everything kind of comes together. So I know a little bit about your story, but you've been in the field about as long as I've been in, a little over 20 years, I think. But I think what I would love for you to share is how you decided that you wanted to pursue this path of becoming a wellness practitioner. I know you had your daughters, and wasn't it kind of like the birth of your first child was somewhat of a catalyst to get you thinking differently about health and well-being?
Yes, ma'am, it was. Having those babies it changes your life.
Yeah.
Absolutely changes your life. I actually had home births, so that's a little fun fact about me.
Oh.
Both my children were born in a hot tub here in my home, still live here. And, just going down that path there alone was a big difference 22 years ago. That was how long ago. It was like, what in the world are you doing? And people were pushing me and asking a lot of kind of negative questions about it, And I read a book, and it is out there still, by Kevin Trudeau, called Natural Cures: What They Don't Want You to Know. And that book changed my life. That was when I read about the FDA government, just a lot of things that just weren't really sitting well with me after reading that. And it was about getting flour and sugar out of your life too, right? Just
Yeah.
the processed foods, the chemical laden franken foods. And I thought, I got to get rid of this crap for my children, for my
Yeah.
baby.
Yeah.
And so there was that piece, but also I needed to lose weight. I had the baby weight and it wasn't going away. And I was feeling like I needed to get back into my pre baby body.
Sure.
I was dealing with postpartum depression that I didn't even know I had.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went out and started teaching excuse me, I went out and started taking exercise classes.
Okay.
And within about a year, I was teaching them.
Nice. And what kind of classes were you teaching?
They were called Burn and Firm, and they were strength training
I love
with,
it.
yep, with bands and some weights and stability balls.
Very cool. I used to teach a class called Muscle Mix. I One of my favorite things about group exercise programming is the names that people have to come up with to differentiate their classes from maybe other competitors. But I think that sounds great
I know it's
terms of
funny
how
how we
you kind of just were drawn into the field. And I love whenever I have a woman on the podcast who's gone through, pregnancy and childbirth and, parenting. I think it's just really interesting because most people have some kind of postpartum mental health experience that maybe they don't even know they're going through in that moment. And so for me, it was anxiety.
mm,
But all they really talk about is postpartum depression. The screenings are more around depression. But I had postpartum anxiety. I have a coworker who had postpartum obsessive compulsive disorder, which OCD is an anxiety disorder. So I love it when people, women, talk about, hey, when I became a mom, this is what my experience was. Because even if we don't dive into that experience as it was for you, just saying, hey, I had this, it helps normalize and destigmatize what a lot of women, I think, go through after they have a baby. So thank you for sharing that. So you had your daughter, you became a fitness instructor. When did you start to get interested in more of the holistic approach and the health coaching and working with individuals to have a better understanding of their health and well-being?
Well, over the years, I've been through a lot as an entrepreneur, even. I had a gym in
Okay.
2007. So after going through, the baby and then kind of deciding what I wanted to do with my life, I have a communications background. That's what I went to
Okay.
school for, to be a news reporter, which I did do for a while. But
Fun fact,
now,
I didn't know that.
that was back in 1999.
I
Yeah, it's
love
been a
it.
while. I moved to Cedar Rapids and did that. But like I say, after I had my baby, I was working as a communications specialist for Des Moines
Okay.
Waterworks.
Okay.
And when I got into the health thing, it just kind of landed in my lap to start teaching some classes, like I said. And I was making some money. And by 2007, I decided to be a certified personal trainer
Okay.
because I really wanted to help people with their physical fitness because it helped me immensely
Yeah.
with my mental health and my physical fitness. And I felt better. And so I started a gym with my husband, and that didn't make it because of the recession. So by 2010, I was looking for work and brought the
Yeah.
gym home. So I do have a lower level studio in my home still to this
Oh,
day.
nice.
It's gotten bigger and better over the years. But in 2010, a lot of those people that were in my studio in Ankeny moved to my home. I had 28 women signed up coming into my basement.
Nice.
So that was pretty cool. And so that entrepreneur spirit was always there and to help women. And then I took this job as a kind of a communications person for Guide One Insurance. And
Okay.
while I was there, they saw that I had this health side because I actually went there to teach classes for them.
Okay.
And then a job opened up, so I applied for the job. So, I came in with the exercise, then the job, part-time job. Then it turned to a full-time job because they saw my abilities. I was excited, and I took an ergonomics role. So
Okay.
I learned all about ergonomics all of a sudden, and this is like 2011. Didn't know
Yeah.
a thing about it before that,
Yeah.
but it married well with physical fitness.
Sure. So I know what ergonomics is. I know what the term means, but for our listeners who may be less familiar, can you share just kind of what is the definition of ergonomics so they know, because we're going to dive into this a little more deeply so they can follow the conversation more closely. What is ergonomics?
Yeah, so it's the science of fitting a person to the task instead of the task to the person, if that
Okay.
makes sense. So
Yeah.
it's the tools you use to do the job you do, and the environment you do it in.
Okay.
So it's related to factories, to offices, to outdoor work, labor work. There's a variety of ergonomics, and it is an OSHA recommended guideline.
Okay. So in the workplace, it's one thing. And then in our home lives, like let's just say the kitchen, for example, when you're, cooking and preparing food, like ergonomics would fit not just in the workplace, but in your personal life as well, right? Like how you have maybe your
Sure.
television set up in your living room, or especially now we have so many people working from home. I think, and we'll get to this, but I would imagine that workplace ergonomics has become a little more complicated with the introduction of work from home because people may not have what they need to work from home, um, to
Exactly.
make them comfortable and efficient. And I would imagine that, an ergonomics observation can't really be done in the home like it could be done in a workplace. So thanks for giving us that high level overview. When you were at Guide One Insurance, you were in a role where you were helping with their own team members' ergonomic stations, like workstation setups. So, what are some of the things you look for, or were you looking for at the time?
A lot of it was just discomfort at the chair.
Okay,
To be honest, that's the number one thing, is having a really good chair. So that was where we were finding a lot of back and bottom pain. There's some carpal tunnel, some of those big ones. But yeah, just making sure people were fitting at their desk properly, like having those 90-degree angles, and again, the tools, trying to make sure that people weren't going the wrong way when they were trying to twist and move, and that we could bring things to them and provide better tools for them, whether it was a good mouse. Monitors went from 1 to 2 back then
sure.
to now 3, 4, 6. I don't know,
Yeah.
people have so many. But yeah, so I was looking to help people there, and then brought in like a full, robust exercise stretching at your desk program that
Nice.
I built and brought into the company.
Very nice. And then did they do that on their own, or were there designated times where everyone in the organization would get up and stretch?
It was really by the teams. So it
Okay.
wasn't the entire company. No, I wanted to do that, but it just didn't fly. But instead, it would be like, the underwriting team under this particular leader would say, okay, everybody, at 10 a.m., you've got 10 minutes to just do your thing.
Sure.
Or I would go into those locations and talk to the manager, say, what's a good time to pop down? Pop down, there's 8 to 10 employees. Let's all get up right now. Let's do it. And I would be that kind of encouraging supporter to make them feel comfortable doing it.
Yeah. I think people underestimate how beneficial stretching is just in general, right? Like, I also have a group exercise background, though I've retired that part of my life. But I still observe it when I am a member I go to the YMCA here and I take a lot of fitness classes. And, a lot of people cut out for the last 5 minutes of a fitness class. And that's the stretching component usually, right? They're in a hurry or they want to get a, jump start on, the line in the locker room shower or whatever. But I'm always thinking like stretching is so important. And I don't know how I went through many, many years of my life without having a morning stretching routine. And I like to find other opportunities throughout my day and into the evening to stretch. But talk a little bit about stretching because I think a lot of people would benefit from thinking about stretching differently. It's not just for flexibility, right? It's so much more than that. So why would stretching throughout the workday or before work or before bed be helpful for someone?
Right. Well, the best part about stretching is it doesn't have to be difficult. It's not going to hurt. It's not, going to cause as much fatigue as like a workout, like a
Sure.
cardio, or so it's a simple thing, and it doesn't take much to just spend, a couple minutes, but it gets the blood flowing. It
Mm-hmm.
opens up the capillaries, some of the, the blood flow. It starts to help with the tendons, the tightness, the stiffness that goes on as we age. It hurt, body aches and pains, and especially when you're doing competitive, or excuse me, um, consistent work like repetitive motion. You want to make sure that you're able to kind of move those hands and wrists and things to just help loosen things up.
Yeah. Do you have any online stretching go tos, any resources that you send people to if they're looking for stretching routines? Do you have any favorites?
Not really. I have my own that I've built and I send
Oh,
those. I have PDFs and
yeah.
I've clicked, there's a few YouTubes for like ankle mobility stretches so that I deal with as a personal trainer, which I still am. I'm dealing with people with mobility issues. And so, especially in the ankles and in the feet. So I have one that I use for YouTube and I can't remember. I think it's Mind Pump.
Okay.
It's a person off of their team that's got a great little video to show
Yeah.
you some good ones.
We can
You
find
can't do a
it.
good squat without a good ankle mobility.
That's true. So again, that kind of goes back to the whole person approach and the whole body approach. And so if we can find that link, I'll drop it in the show notes so our listeners can explore that video. I want to talk to you a little bit about personal training because people are usually drawn to personal training because they want to transform some part of their physical health, right? They want to lose weight, they want to build muscle, they want to look different, they want to feel better. But as a personal trainer, have you evolved your practice to be more than just physical training?
Yes,
Yes.
that is the part that we haven't got to. But as that trainer, I worked with women and some men and realized that diet and exercise are not the only answer.
Yeah.
And so that's what propelled me into wanting to figure out what more could I do. Because to be honest, I'd work with someone for, say, 6 months, maybe a year. They'd lost some weight, they'd been feeling better, and then they fall off. And then I would see them maybe a couple of years down the road and they'd gained the weight back, maybe more, maybe dealing with chronic disease at that point, because it didn't stand as a lifestyle for them. It came in and it was a quick win. I got ready for a
Sure.
wedding. I wanted to lose my 10 pounds. I did, or lost 50 pounds. But then unfortunately, it went back to, just not a sustainable habit. So,
Uh-huh.
and for myself, to be honest, I went through a divorce. I went through, the job changes. And I needed to really work on my own emotional wellness, my emotional well being. So I dug into what is it going to take, and I found Well Coaches, School of Coaching for Wellness and Health People. You didn't have to have any personal training background, anything like that. But it was one of the more robust programs I'd seen at the time and had been told about it through another wellness advocate like myself. And so I ended up taking that class, and they had a 4-day cohort here at Drake University. And it was an amazing program, and that was in 2018. And
Okay.
then they give you 1 year from that day, from the end of that program, and a lot of it is, self-paced,
Mhm.
to take a test, to have coaching clients that are unpaid, and to put your hours in, and then you would get your certification, which is what I did. And by 2019, I was a certified wellness coach. And then in 2021, took the boards and became a national board certified wellness coach. Yeah.
I
So
think that's important to just share that you have that national certification because in this age of access to information and influencers, and anyone can really kind of say, hey, I'm a wellness expert, or I'm a health expert, or I'm a nutrition expert. And I've talked a lot about this with the registered dietitians that we work with at EFR. And they feel very passionately about this as well, that, they have the licensure, and the education to help people make food choices, to do really specific nutrient goal planning. And with health coaching, I think it's really important to note that you are a board certified health coach, meaning you've put in the hours and the time and you continue to do that to get, I'm assuming you have to do some kind of CECs to maintain that certification. And so I just think it's really important. It's like buyer beware, right? If you're someone online looking for advice, be careful where you're getting it from because not everyone is credible. And not all advice is good advice. And so I think it's just really important to emphasize that people need to be mindful and look for things like accreditation and licensure and certification when they're trying to partner with someone to help them reach their health goals. Um, I was just thinking about you mentioned you worked with a lot of women, and one of the hottest topics right now in well being and workplace well being is supporting women who are kind of premenopausal, menopausal, postmenopausal. And is that coming up at all with your clients, like how to support the changes that they're experiencing with their hormones and their physical health and emotional health as they go through that stage of life?
absolutely. It's a trendy topic right now, I guess, trendy, or
It's a
maybe it's
hot
just the
topic for
timing.
sure.
It is a hot topic, yes, because just like mental health and some of the other categories, it feels like a stigma is attached to those things. So we haven't
Sure.
talked about them. We're keeping it under the rug. Don't tell anybody I'm in menopause because it makes me not a woman anymore. It's like, no, sorry, but this is life and it affects a lot of things. And so, yes, I definitely feel like I'm getting more people asking me about it or maybe me even talking about it because, that's where I've gone through that too. I'm at that age where that's
Yeah.
happened for me now. So I'm on the other side of it for the most part at this point, but uh yeah, it's a big deal.
Yeah, it's been coming up in a lot of my wellness committee meetings. I sit on a variety of wellness committees with our clients, and a lot of them are wanting more information around it because a large portion of the workforce is, fitting this demographic of women who are maybe in their 40s or 50s experiencing these things. So I was curious. Um, let's go back to ergonomics. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about what I would call gimmicks that exist. There's always a lot of attention around alternative workstations. And so it could be a sit stand station, it could be sitting on a ball, sitting on some other kind of device that you need to activate the core to, maintain good posture. And so I'm just curious, um, as someone who is an ergonomics expert, and I'm guessing that you've surrounded yourself by other people in that space through education and probably ongoing CECs. What are some things to consider when people want to jump into a sit stand workstation, sitting on a ball, the walking, the treadmill workstations? Because I think on the surface they seem like a great idea, right? I'm going to get more steps in a day. I'm going to stand up more. I'm going to activate my core, but what are some of the things people really need to think about before they take that step? And maybe what are some of the things they need to be mindful of or beware of before they transition a traditional desk and chair to something different?
Well, sure. The first thing is knowing what even the ergonomics means for you. Like, are you sitting in your chair properly? Are you in your neutral positions? Do you know what any of that means? So, as a company or an organization, for them to have some training in ergonomics would be number one. They need to get their
Okay.
employees trained in how proper ergonomic setup, which really doesn't take a lot of time, but it does take some reiteration because we all need to hear things more than once.
Sure.
So, I mean, but having a good chair, let's start there. Just having a good mouse, keyboard setup, those kinds of things are really important. There's like four key components of a good ergonomics workstation. But I do believe, and I did back in 2012 when I started this, that a sit stand workstation is very important because it's adjustable. I'm only 5 foot tall. I'm actually probably more like 4'11" and a half or so.
You're
So
tiny.
I'm a short, yes, I am
Yeah.
short and petite, and a 29-inch desk is the average desk, which is, the ones that don't move. They're just basic. That is not going to work for a woman my size. My feet won't touch the floor. I'm not going to get in a good ergonomics position. So having those adjustable desks that can go to like 27 inches up to
Mhm.
42 inches or different variations is really important even as you sit. Just
Sure.
because when you've got a standard desk that doesn't move, now you've got to come up with all kinds of ways to get yourself comfortable.
Yeah.
So that's a big part of it. So the sit stand is great, but now we got to learn also how often should I sit? How often should I stand? How often should I stretch? The three S's, very important.
The stand stretch. Okay.
Yes. So those are important. We also make transitions during the day, whether it's a bathroom break, going to the printer, different things like that.
Hmm.
How often should I be transitioning? So those are important. All of that helps with your workflow. Have you used anything else? No, you haven't sat on a ball, you don't have a treadmill desk, and you still are finding ways to make
Sure.
movement in your day happen. So
Sure.
there are a lot of gimmicks, they're gizmos, they're not necessarily great. I remember us talking a little bit about that stability ball.
Yeah.
I was saying right in the beginning that I learned exercise through using a stability ball, but I went to a 1 hour class 2 days a week. People that sit on stability balls for 8 hours a day, basically, you're trying to work your core for 8 hours straight.
Yeah.
That's not okay.
Right.
So
And
we,
similar to people that you don't have to stand up for 8 hours a day. If you have an
no,
adjustable workstation, you're
that's not
not
okay.
meant to stand up. I mean, that's why people that do have to stand, in assembly lines or maybe healthcare workers, they end up with, their own musculoskeletal issues, right? From having to be on their feet all day. And so don't choose to be on your feet all day if you don't have to be, but give yourself the opportunity to stand up more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's we always talked about. If a person that worked in one of those industries had an opportunity for a chair, they'd use it. They'd sit.
Yes. Yes.
And then we've got people sitting that want anti-fatigue mats and all this extra stuff so they can stand all day, which makes no sense. If
Right.
you're fatigued, then use your chair and sit.
Right.
We don't just go, okay, let's start buying anti-fatigue mats that now can be a trip hazard because you have a chair. So it's
Hmm.
not going to roll over the chair properly. Now you're there's so many different reasons it just doesn't make sense in the
Sure.
in the ergonomics world. So yeah.
What does, if the average desk is 29 inches, what size frame does that really fit well to? It's not going to work for you. You're shorter. I'm guessing it's
Right.
not going to work for someone who's 6'5". But
Right.
what are,
Probably 5'6" and to 6 feet
okay.
tall
So there's a
person.
lot of people.
So a good variety of people. I mean, but women typically we're average, not 5'6". I think
Right.
average is 5'4" or 5'5".
Yeah. So I was going to say there's a lot of people outside of that range because there's a lot of people under 5'6" and there's a lot of people over 6 feet tall.
Right, it's
So
the fifth percentile and the 95th percentile that we're trying to help with, right? It's on those
yes.
both of those extremes, and that's why a sit stand desk is nice for that.
Okay.
But ergonomics also is a good reason for it is for those same people that are just outside of some of maybe the basic guidelines where things just aren't going to work the same,
Okay. So
like
how could,
monitor arms, right? So you've got a monitor that might do some adjusting. It's going to only adjust a few inches. That's probably going to work for those 5'5" to 6 foot tall people. But then you get beyond that, and depending on their anthropometrics, which is, where how long their torso is, how far from their hips to their knees to their feet are. So there's measurements there on all of our bodies. You and I both could be 5 foot tall, but totally different
yeah,
compositions,
I was
right?
just thinking that like I have a long torso and short legs, and I have a friend that's 5'3" that has longer legs than me, and I'm 5'5". So it's like it's not just what your height is, it's how long your legs are, how long your torso is, how long your arms are.
Exactly.
So I'd like to just kind of give our listeners an idea of how they could connect with you, what maybe they own a business or manage a business or work in HR and they want to bring this in. So how can someone partner with you to have their workplace, assessed for ergonomics?
I do have a sign up on my website.
Okay.
It's a newsletter sign up. You can put your name and your email in there so that you can get right signed up, and then I connect with you right away. So
Okay.
there's that. You can also reach me at Kimberly at fireflywellness.us,
Okay.
and that's a great place. Obviously, email. So email or my website. Website is www.fireflywellness.us. And again, that's where the newsletter sign up is. And whoever reaches me that way can also leave a note what they're
Perfect.
looking for.
Perfect. And you're
Hmm.
located in central Iowa. Um, can you do virtual ergonomic assessments or do you need to be in person?
I can do
You can do
ergonomics
virtual.
assessments virtually.
Okay. Do you know, I mean, when you walk into a workspace, do you know within a few minutes what's going on? Or
I
30
absolutely do.
seconds? I mean,
Yes.
10 seconds?
Yeah. Yeah, I can tell. First of all, just looking at the chair tells me a lot.
Yeah.
But, if I get to, part of that is watching the workflow, watch the person do their job. But before I even do that, when I come in, immediately they're sitting at their chair typically.
Okay.
Okay, most people are sitting at their chair waiting for me
Sure.
to come. And when I come and see them at their chair, immediately,
You know. Okay.
I'm either going to see it or it's going to be okay. It's either a red flag right there, or it's oh they're seated pretty good. That looks pretty
Yeah.
good.
As a lot of workplaces are, going through redesigns and, modernizing workspaces, um, one thing that's become more popular, and I can't think of the name off the top of my head, but it's not having a designated workstation. It's like commuter
Hoteling,
stations, hoteling. Yes, thank you. Does that, I would imagine that makes it a little more challenging for people because they're not in the same spot every day. And so
absolutely.
they
It's
gotta
kind of messy,
adjust.
actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not too great.
Yeah, I wouldn't like hoteling. I like to have my own space and for a variety of reasons. But yes, there are a lot of more, um, I would say, modern workplaces that have that approach. What about the work from home component? Because like I'm in the office 2 days a week and I'm home 3 days a week. And I
Oh,
think back to, I'd never worked from home until the pandemic. And when the pandemic happened 5 years ago, I was in a one bedroom apartment. I didn't have a designated workstation. I was sitting, you're going to cringe. I was sitting at a countertop kitchen space with bar stools.
Yeah.
Like my bar stools did not match, they were not the appropriate type of chair. It was just my life circumstances at the time. I didn't have an opportunity to get different seating. So I was given these from a friend, and it was like bar stools, but counter height, right? I
Yeah.
needed I needed a bar stool with a bar height or a counter stool with a counter height. The ergonomics was horrible. And, for the first several months of the pandemic, that was 5 days a week for me, 8+ hours a day. Um, it has improved since then because I'm no longer in that space and I have different furniture. But for people who are working from home, what do you think some of the biggest things to look for are in a home workspace? Other than the
Well,
chair, we know the chair is important, but what do you
yeah.
think people are commonly doing in home workspaces?
Well, one thing is okay, some dangling feet on a situation like that. So we're
Oh,
dangling,
yeah, I was
which,
dangling all day.
yeah. So that might not, you might not notice it now, but it could cause something down the road.
Is
I
that like
think
low back pain? What do
could be
you?
low back pain, could be some numbness in the back of the knees, depending on
Okay.
where the chair hits the knee, in the back of the leg, because that's really important too, seat pan depth, things like that. But
Okay.
you're not going to have that unless you have a chair that adjusts. And
Okay.
there's companies that don't even have chairs that adjust like that. So
Okay.
that's really not good.
Yeah.
That's not helping your employees and supporting their needs because if their chairs don't adjust, then they have no choice, do they? I
Right.
mean, and different size people are going to fit differently in those chairs. That's the other issue is when you've got someone leaving a company and they had it adjusted a certain way or had a certain chair, the new person coming in is unlikely their same size.
True. But they're going to get their workstation. They're going to be
Yeah, they're
plopped
getting
right
their
into the same
workstation
workstation. Yeah.
and they're not even going to know how to change anything up. And, that's another whole piece of it. But at home, I'm going to say contact stress too. Because, the palms and the wrists are on countertops and hard
Sure.
surfaces, and they're not, they don't know where to put their wrists. So their wrists end up getting, some damage in those little veins.
Okay.
And you can end up with carpal tunnel or maybe numbness of your fingers, trigger fingers, just all kinds of things. There's Raynaud's syndrome. There's a lot of different syndromes out there that this relates to
Okay.
for people, especially circulatory issues.
Okay.
And
Good
if
to
you're
know.
already prone to it because of maybe your lifestyle factors or
Hmm.
something you might be having going on with your health, now you put your arms on there and you're not stretching and doing the right things throughout the day and your 90-degree angles, you are more likely to get it than someone who is already, doesn't have those issues or they're more healthy, active, and that they're also stretching.
Yeah. I have Renaud's, and that's like, I've never thought of the ergonomics piece related to that.
Yeah.
I get it when the weather is cold. I will often have, it's always the middle finger on my left hand. It literally has no blood flow to the fingertip, and it
Right.
will happen to my toes sometimes. But now I'm like mentally going back, I'm like, did it get worse when I started working from home? I'm gonna have to think about that. But that's just something I never would have connected the dots on, that a circulatory issue that I've been experiencing for a lot of my adult life could be related to my workstation.
It
So,
could. You're
yeah.
working at your desk for 8 hours a
Yeah.
day. Whatever we do there is going to connect to our lives. It's just the way it is. And that's
Yeah.
why I encourage employers to spend some funds on making sure that they have these health initiatives to help people during the day. Because if they're not doing it during the day at their work day for 8 hours, how are they going to get it all done at home at night? You're
Exactly.
going to need to spend some time during the days with stretching, with accommodations, with some comfortability.
Yeah.
That's the right word.
Yeah. We can make
Uh,
up words. That's
okay, good.
that's one of the things I love about the podcast is we can make up words.
Yay. I love it. That's good.
So this is all really helpful. I also think if you're an employer looking to do an office redesign, please
Reach out
look,
ahead of time.
yeah, reach out
Thank you
ahead
for
of time.
bringing that up,
Yeah.
Johanna, because here's the thing I'm experiencing, and I did back in working for the corporate. That was one good reason they had me there was to see things and be proactive about it. But having ergonomics was almost after the fact. They're already having
Yeah.
problems. They're having workers'
Yeah.
comp claims, right? So you have a claim for someone with a carpal tunnel, it's going to cost 30 grand. Okay, you could have someone come in for $500 and be able to help you
Yeah.
with looking at things in advance so that employees know what they should be doing, what should they look out for. And, we're finding that this is happening after the fact. So if you're going to do a whole remodel, why not pay for some ergonomics consultant
Sure.
to come in and to talk to you and help you through making sure that those bar stools are appropriate for the right workstations.
Right.
Checking in on that stuff because after the fact, you've already built the bar and it's stationary. Guess what? You can't aren't going to turn around and spend the money to get rid of that bar,
Right.
but it's not going to fit for all your workers.
Right.
It's a great idea. I love bars because it gives people an opportunity to stand, but when they're stationary and they're not adjustable, now we're all stuck and we're
Mm,
all different sizes and heights and shapes and size. So please reach out. Let's think about this in advance to be getting people so they are more supported at their desks, meaning, supported in a lot of ways.
sure.
That supports people emotionally, even if we
Yeah.
don't see that us saying, we've got an ergonomics program, we have someone that can help you. Don't you think that person's already going to feel better? Like, wow, this company cares about me. They brought someone in to make sure that I'm seated properly and that my workstation's laid out good.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I think that's when we talk about EAP benefits, and that's what we do at EFR, we want team members to know that they're supported. And whether they're using the benefit or not, just having it in place shows that their employer cares about them. And we hope that they're using the benefit, but we know that they're not all using it, but it's available. And so
Mm-hmm.
having an ergonomics assessment available, for team members and
Exactly.
encouraging them to do it and educating them around why it's important, I think is really key. So this was a great conversation. I love that you shared a little bit about your personal life and journey, to where you are today. And I think the information about the ergonomics in the workplace is going to be helpful for, I think, several of our listeners. So thank you so much. I will record some of these notes that we talked about in the show notes. So your website, your email address, the Natural Cures book by Kevin Trudeau. I will also link to that if you think it's a great resource for people. And then I just love kind of ending on the sit, stand, stretch, right? So if you are someone listening, maybe you've been listening to this podcast and you're seated at your desk, it's time to stand up and stretch, right?
Yes.
I think one thing I really like, and I'm guessing you probably incorporate this into your coaching and training, is habit stacking, right? So what can you stack? You want to stand up more, you want to stretch more. What are some other habits that you could stack alongside that? So it might be that you stand up to eat a meal, you stand up at breakfast or you stand up at lunch, or you stretch when you're watching a TV show, or you stretch first thing in the morning. But habit stacking, and what can you do to kind of get yourself trained or your brain retrained to start doing some of those things that overall have a really big impact on our health and well-being. So
Well, your morning routine, everybody has one. So, like little things we can be doing there, whether it's like, okay, I'm heading to the bathroom to brush my teeth first thing in the morning. Maybe I'll stretch my wrists just before I grab that toothbrush,
yeah.
sitting down to use the restroom, little things like that. Maybe just taking some breaths
Yeah.
and just connecting to your feet as they touch the floor where you're seating, just those little things I think help a lot. Smelling your food and your coffee and your teas before you just pound them down, just noticing that's where the mindfulness piece comes in. And again, the ergonomics piece and all of it, yes, we can say the employer needs to do a ton of work to help us make sure we have great chairs and workstations, but we also have to take accountability for our lifestyle factors. And
Sure.
when we can be doing better things for ourselves and be thinking about some of that stuff, then it's going to help in the long run. It's going to help. So yeah, I love the little habit stacking. I'm trying to do more of that myself.
Yeah.
So I don't know if those things helped, but your eyes, don't forget to, be looking out the window, look at the bright light. The sun is coming out. Where spring is hitting us now here in the Midwest. So it's a great time to be able to look out and see the sun. So if you're at an office or if you're working from home, don't forget to leave the monitor, the
Sure.
light, and look out at the real light. And
Yeah.
so stacking those with your transitions, right? I
Yeah.
need to get up and go to the printer or I need to use the bathroom. I'm going to look out the window while I'm up.
Yeah. No, I love those ideas. And that's a whole other topic, that
It
direct
is.
sunlight exposure in the morning. So if you want to talk about that, I'll have you back on the podcast.
It's a thing.
Okay. I've been trying to do it lately. So thank you
Good.
so much, Kimberly. Really appreciate your time and the conversation. And I will link all of your contact information in the show notes.
Awesome. Thank you so much for
You're
having me
welcome.
today.
You're welcome. Thank you for listening to Emotion Well. Employee and Family Resources, or EFR, is a 501c3 nonprofit organization located in Des Moines, Iowa. We support communities, workplaces, and schools with comprehensive behavioral health services. If you would like to contribute to our mission, please click on the donation link in our show notes.